What's up guys? It's time to finish my short bed conversion on my 68 F100. I just got done shortening the bed and getting that all welded up and ground up and all cleaned up and ready to go. And now what I need to do is work on the frame part of this truck and get it cut down so that we can put the bed back on. The first thing I'm gonna do is cut off the 4 inches off the backside. That's the easiest part of this. We'll have to transfer some of the holes, so I'll get those all cleaned up and ground up and transferred over. Then I'll take like the parking brake out and take the drive line out and get the exhaust cut off so that we can get everything cleaned up here, and we'll get everything prepped on the side of the frame so that we can mark out how we're going to cut this, and then we'll go ahead and make our cuts, weld it together, and then we'll put everything back and it'll be good. Then we'll put the bed on at the end here and we'll see how it comes out. So the easier of the two cuts is going to be cutting the 4 inches off the backside. Again, what I got to do is I'm just going to grind this down, and then because I'm just going to cut the last 4 inches off, what I need to do is find out where these holes are that are on here and transfer those 4 inches forward so that I can have those holes for whatever. And I know that this hole right here on the end is going to be for the bed mount, and then I've got these two holes here marked with this blue marker that I know that that's where the frame mount or the bumper mounts that I have bolt in here, but I want to keep these other holes just in case they are needed for something else. If I do a different bumper install or something down the road, I want to make sure that I have all the holes that I have right now. So we're going to clean that up, drill the new holes, and then lop off the ends, and then we'll move on to the next part. Now that was fairly easy to do. I took a couple extra seconds trying to figure out my measurements, because before you cut that piece off, you're measuring from the end over where the holes are and then where the new cut's gonna be over to where the holes are, and it was throwing me off a little bit, but anyways, you guys will figure it out. It's pretty simple. And then the only thing is these holes right here there's two holes for the bumper attachments. You're supposed to open these up, kind of make a oblong hole, because of where the centers of the two holes fall. Like these two holes right here, these two guys, the center of that is actually where this hole was. So you kind of have to make like a slot, and it's kind of a pain in the butt because the drill bits just want to slide through there. And I used just a carbide tip just to open it up. It didn't turn out very good, but it will work because I took my bumper bracket and I put it up there, and the holes do line up, so we're good to go. Anyway, so that's, again, that's the easy part. We got that cut off. Now let's move up here. So there's a couple things that we need to do to get this prepped. We got to get this cable out of the way. The nice thing about the parking brake cable is that with the long bed, they just put some extension pieces in here. So if we just take those extension pieces out, the brake cable should just connect to the bracket up here, and we don't have to modify the parking brake or anything, which is awesome. The spring will be a little long, so I'll have to figure that out, but at least the cables are good. You need to take the drive shaft out, and we might be able to just take it off the slip yoke and then just unbolt it from the third member back there and take that piece out. And then I got to get that shortened up. I'd like to go to an aluminum drive shaft for the plans in the truck, but maybe it's just easier just to get this guy shortened up for now. Again, that's a project I'll figure out later. And then the exhaust. They've got a couple of, what are these, resonators or something that are in here. We need to get those guys out of there. And my exhaust, if I were to shorten the bed, the exhaust would stick out past the bed. So I'm gonna have to figure out what I wanna do, if I'm gonna cut the end off and just have it come out in front of the tires right here, or what. I'll have to figure something out. I didn't really plan for that when I was thinking about this project, but we'll get to it. And then once we get this stuff out of the way, you should probably also clean up the frame a little bit while you're here. You know, we're gonna have to grind all this off the sides to get everything prepped and cleaned up so that we can put our marks on there and make our cuts. But gosh, while you're here, it wouldn't hurt to clean everything up and get some of that like rust encapsulator stuff or whatever, just to coat the frame while you're here. So I might do that. Yeah, so let's get this taken apart. Now we're ready to get this thing marked up and get it ready to cut. Don't forget to disconnect the brake line. You probably could maybe leave it, intact and then just try to hold it out of the way, but it's just easier if this isn't in the way. And then there's a wire harness back here that, again, I don't want to cut the wires yet, so I'm gonna see if I can cut around them, but it may be a problem for me down the road. So what I want to do is, we got to cut 16 inches out, and we're going to do a 21-inch span so that we have 5 inches of overlap. I'm going to do a Z-shaped cut so that we've got overlap of this piece on top of this piece. And then I also want to round the edges of the corners, and I'll show you that here in a minute, because if we can help it, we don't want any sharp angles, sharp corners where we weld, because that cracks could lead from there. So if we have a rounded edge here and it comes around and then it's rounded again, I think that'll turn out better and it'll give us a better chance of it not failing down the road. So where we're going to start, so there's 2 holes up here. There's an oblong hole, a slot hole, and then just a regular hole. This slot hole is for the bed bolts. And on my frame, there's actually kind of a worn out section on both sides where the bar underneath the bed sits on here. And so I can tell where that's sitting, and I don't really want to cut right there. I don't want my welds right there because it'll rub on it. So, and that's about 3/4, from the end of this slot, 3/4 of an inch back is kind of the edge of that. So I'm going to go 1 inch back, which just happens to be right on the front edge of this next hole. So if you measure that out, 1 inch. So I'm going to draw a line from here, and then for now I'm just going to draw it down. Then I'm going to go 21 inches back to here, draw another line, and that's my work area, but when we're only going to cut out 16 inches. Mark a mark. Again, it just happens to be right here on the edge of this hole. And something to think about too, the thickness of this tip is about a 1/16 of an inch or so. So keep that in mind when you're measuring your cuts here. When you go to cut this, you're going to have a kerf, the width of the whatever cut. They're using a Sawzall blade or a cutoff wheel, or I'm going to use a plasma cutter in my case here, but that's going to make a kerf, a width of cut. So you need to take that into consideration when you're making your measurements on here. Now I've got the beginning where the front is. I'm starting this. These pens, these are just a chalk marker. I need to give credit to 330 Garage. I was watching his video on this. I watched several videos just to make sure I knew what I was doing on this, and he used these in his video, and they really are fantastic because they wipe off pretty easily. But they mark pretty well on the metal. So then we're going to go 21 inches back and make our next line. And what I want to point out here is there's an indent in the frame in front of this spring, well, what is it, spring shackle, spring perch, something like that. I don't want to get into that. I'm going to be cutting in front of that. So we're making and we're not going to cut everything here. We're just making a mark of this work range, this work zone that we've got. Okay, so then I'm going to overlap this part of the frame on top of this part, but I'm going to overlap this part over here. So what I mean by that, we're going to cut this in half. It's 6 inches wide right here and about 6 3/8 or so right here. I'm just going to do 3 inches down for the middle of this part. And because I'm going to have 5 inches of this overlap that, we're going to make a 5-inch mark. Let's come over 5 inches. Okay, so we're going to keep this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this off, just rub this off. There. That part I'm going to keep, but I'm not going to keep this part. And the same thing down here, we're just going to come over 5 inches. And again, we're going to just take this off right here. We're not going to save that. And we can also, let me get a towel for this. There, so that's what we're going to cut out, and then these pieces are going to come together. But we want to do one more thing. Remember, I want that radius corner so that we don't have any sharp edges. So I'm just using a hole saw. This is about 1 1/4 inch diameter. That's probably plenty. An inch diameter would probably be sufficient, but this is what I've got. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna line this up here and just draw around it. On all of my corners. There. Then I want to wipe off where I'm not going to cut. So this is going to take a little extra care when we're cutting because I got to cut around a corner. One thing you could do for here, for this one and for this one, you could actually use a hole saw. Nope, sorry. This one and this one, because those pieces are going away. You could use that hole saw. I could, and then just drill through here and just cut that corner, but it wouldn't work here because I need to keep this piece. So I do have to cut around that way, but because I'm losing this piece, it doesn't matter if I have a hole right here and then I've got some cuts. That's not gonna hurt anything. But I'm gonna just use my plasma cutter and hope I do a good job coming around these corners. And then we could just mark what we're going to get rid of here. I'm going to cut along here with the plasma cutter. You could use the Sawzall or a grinder cutoff wheel piece. I may use a combination of that just depending on how this goes. What is this, like 3/16 or so, maybe 1/8, probably 3/16 thick. That's going to be fine. And then I do the same thing on that side over there. One thing I did want to point out too, because of it's wider here than it is over here, there's a little bit of a jog or kind of a step up, and it looks like we're kind of at the end of that. So the nice thing is this piece here and that piece there should be about the same height, and we shouldn't have a difference in height of the metal when we go to put these together. Hopefully that'll all work out. And that's partly because we're coming an inch off of the slot. If we were to go to a shorter distance, this line transfers down, it would be actually closer to this little, I don't know, whatever you call that. And so by being farther back, we're farther away from it, but I want to be careful because I don't want to get too close to this feature right here. So I think we're in a good spot. You could even probably go back another 1/2 inch and still be fine. And then this would be even better, but this is a good place to stop with this. I'm going to get the other side marked up, and then we're ready to cut. All right, guys, I quickly found out how much I don't know about plasma cutting. That's actually my second time using that machine. It does cut fast, but it's a messy cut, and I had to go back with a cutoff wheel and cut the slag or whatever that was. And the plasma was great for the corners. Remember, I wanted to have those rounded edges, and that would be great because cutting it with a cutoff wheel would be really hard to do. But I don't know how, we'll see how they line up here in a minute. But cutting the straight sections, I probably could have used a cutoff wheel. I don't know, it would have been slower, but anyways. And then I put a wet rag around the wiring that I had here when I was cutting, because I figured if it was wet, if it soaks up any sparks, it's not gonna catch this on fire. And I got the sheathing, the plastic sheathing just a little bit, but the wires are good, so we're good there. And then when we soak this up, I'll probably just bend the wire. With the line, I might do like an S shape with the line, but I'll figure that out here pretty soon. Anyway, so now you did see, I also cleaned up the edges. Now, I did the same thing on the other side. We're gonna test fit this and see how it lines up. I might have to do some more grinding here, but I think we're in a good spot. Also, one more thing, when you're cutting one side, it's fine because it's still being held by the other side, but when you cut the second side, it's better to cut the back end first. Then this comes free, then you can cut the part that's attached to the truck. The reason why I say that is if you were to cut this part up here in the truck first, with this thing moving around and stuff, it's difficult to cut that last piece, but with this it's pretty solid. So that one, I cut this side first and it popped free, you probably saw that. But then I'm just using just a jack stand just to hold it up. It is a little back heavy. So I'm gonna move the camera here. We're a good spot to try this out. So, okay, we roll this forward. Now, one of the things I'm noticing is that I probably should raise the truck because there was a little bit of a rake to this thing before we cut it. I need to raise the truck because what I've got is a big gap here and it's ending on the other side. And so if I were to bring this up kind of in the same plane that this is, that would help line that up better. But yeah, I'm gonna have some cleanup to do, but let's get this, let's get that done. Cool. All right, I think we got it where we want. When you're test fitting this, it's the most important part of this is that you get the back end of this parallel or square with the truck, however you want to talk about it. These edges, first of all, they need to be smooth on the outside, on both outsides. That's one way you can tell, but really you need to measure. And if you measure from, for example, these slots, the hole for the front of the bed, measure to a diagonal spot back there and same thing over there. And what you want to do is if your measurements are off, like let's say that measurement was longer than this measurement. Well, then that means I need to bring this part forward, and I was finding that I had to cut a little bit the edge of this off to bring this forward so that distance would shrink up and this distance stayed the same basically. And so I kind of got right where I want to be. I'm within a 1/16 of an inch. I'm just not been able to get it any closer than that. Another thing too, with that plasma cutter, I tried to use a straight edge to cut straight, but I kept catching there's a little metal rest on the bottom that uses to glide down the metal, and I would get caught on the slag because either I was cutting too slow or, anyways, I would mess up my cut. And so I'm thinking that, well, first of all, I'm not very good with the plasma cutter, and you guys are probably better than me, but if you use a cutoff wheel for the straight cuts, you'll have a better straight cut. And then if you're gonna use the plasma cutter for the rounds, then that would be fine. Just because I've got I got a pretty big hole on this side that I'm gonna have to fill in, and on the bottom here, it's a little wider than I'd like. And, but I can fill it in with weld, that's fine. It's not a big deal, but just a heads up on that when you guys get to that part. But you guys are probably better with a plasma cutter than I am anyway, so it doesn't matter. All right, cool, so then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tack these in place and just double check my measurements again, and then I'm gonna fully weld them up, and then we're gonna weld some plates on the outside, but we'll get to that here in a minute. But let me get these welded up, yeah, and get that part done. All right, so we got this weld up. Again, my welds are not great. This is not an instructional video on how to weld. However, we did get everything kind of plugged up. I did have some gaps that I had to fill and kind of do some stuff. I had more trouble on that side. And I'm probably gonna run a couple of beads on the inside just to clean these things up a little bit. But then the next step, I'm gonna grind this smooth because I've got a piece of plate that we're gonna put on here, and I'm gonna weld the plate over the cross of these welds just to, you know, seal up from this piece to this piece with an extra piece of 1/4-inch plate that I bought. All right, now that we got those cleaned up, got everything smoothed out, what I've got is just some 1/4-inch plate. I've got a steel, like a remnant shop here in town that I can just buy scrap pieces, and so I just bought a piece. It was 20 inches long, so I just cut it in half. So that I have one for each side. It's a little longer than I need, but that's okay, it's not gonna hurt anything. So we're gonna put this up here, and the big thing is that I wanna cover these welds that I have. What I don't wanna do is like have it way up here and just get a little bit right here. That's not gonna do us any good, right? But I can't do too far back because then I'll hit this stuff. And really I kinda wanna stay clear of this indentation thing here. So I think if I just line it up like that, that ought to be a good spot. I'll put that in place, tack it and weld it, and then do the same thing on the other side. All right guys, so we got those plates welded on and they're a little hot right now. I'm gonna let them cool off a little bit, and then I'm gonna do some coating. I got some of that rust encapsulator stuff, so I'm gonna do some of this frame coated in that and let that set up and cure. And then let's take a look at the other side real quick. And same thing, got this plate on here. Again, welds are not fantastic. We'll just save that for another day. But it is welded together. We're all welded up. And remember what I was saying before about that bracket. So these will come right up here to where that thing attaches, and we should be good to go. So I got to deal with the drive line. That's going to be a problem for later because I actually do want to lower the truck as well. And I don't know if it's worth getting the drive shaft shortened now, only to find out when I lower it, I'm going to have to change the, I don't know yet. I have to figure that out. But for putting this back together, we don't need to put the exhaust back on. We don't need to put the drive line back in. I can just roll the truck back here and we'll lift this up. So let me let this cool off. We'll get it painted, get it coated, and then we'll roll this back here and see how she fits. So I got everything all buttoned up. I got those plates installed, got the frame coated with that rust encapsulator stuff. When I bought the paint, I bought a case of it because I didn't know how much I was gonna need. I only needed basically one can to do all this, but I'll probably do some more stuff down the road. But I didn't pay attention that it was matte and not like a satin or semi-gloss or something like that. So I'm not wild that it's a matte color, but stuff's expensive, so I'm not gonna buy any more, so we'll just use it. Anyways, got the parking brake hooked up. The drive line, I plugged it in there and I measured. It'll probably be, it's 41.5 inches long to start, and it looks like 25.25 inches would probably be the perfect length for, you know, making sure there's enough of the slip yoke to work on that shaft there, you know, as the truck goes up and down. And if I lower the truck any, it'll move that shaft a little bit up there a little bit. So I think that might be the perfect length. And I need to get that shaft shortened, so I'll take care of that. So right now I'm gonna have to roll the truck back because I don't have a drive line hooked up here. And then I hooked up the brake line. Again, I just did that Z-bend thing I was talking about, and then just tucked the wires off to the side. But for now, I think this is a good place. I think from here we can just roll it back. I'm gonna lift the bed up on the lift and then roll this back, and hopefully everything lines up. So let's do it. All right, so look, I'm a little I gotta find out where I need to be. I'm not supposed to be that close there. I need to put some bolts in here and see how we come out. This, I definitely need to lower. I mean, before when the bed was longer, there was more weight on the frame because there was more weight to the bed, right? And so this thing looks so jacked up and so, it just looks so silly. But let me throw some bolts in here and then See if we can find out where the center of this thing is. There we go, and just like that, we've got the bolts in. All 6 of them line up. The 2 in the back here, they're underneath the bed. I'll have to do that here in a minute, but that's a good sign. Now these shouldn't have changed, right? Because you didn't cut anything there. But the important thing is that the distance from that bolt to that bolt shortened by 16 inches. Not only did we take it out of the bed in that previous video, but in this one we took it out of the frame and the bolts just fell right in. That feels good. That feels awesome. That means that we did it right. Cool, let's roll this truck forward and get it away from the lift so we can see what it looks like. Woohoo! It looks so good. Oh, I gotta cut those bars out of the bed still. And then I gotta put tailgate on the bumper, but we're, short bed truck. So that's part 2 of this video. This was a lot easier to do. I'd say I'm maybe 7 hours into the bed, the frame part, for this video. The previous video, I did the bed conversion, getting all that cut down, and I was about 15, 16 hours or something like that into this part. But with the frame, it was much easier to do, and so less than half the time. So you could easily do this in a long weekend. I got about a week, a little over a week and a half, working after work in the evenings, and then last weekend and this weekend wrapping it up. So, but I just chipped away at it. And anyway, so the only thing I forgot to mention, and I should have pointed out, I cleaned the back of the cab and the front part of the bed before I put them back together, because you're not in there very often, and it's nice to just have it cleaned up. So just something for you guys, if you're in there, might as well just clean it up. I do have to take this back off because I want to do the suspension in the rear. I want to lower it. I've got some other plans with this truck for the front and everything. So this will be kind of a temporary, I guess, fitting, or how the truck sits right now. It won't stay like this forever. Like I said, I got to cut these bars out, put the tailgate back on. Nobody cares about that, so I'll take care of that. But for this, guys, this was way easier than cutting the bed itself. So if you guys are good with thin sheet metal, the bed will be easy for you, but the thickness of the frame metal, everything, I love thicker metal. It's so much easier to weld, but cool. All right, guys, well, yeah, that's a short bed conversion on an F100. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next one.